Have you ever been told you're too sensitive? Do you feel like you have a disproportionately negative reaction to criticism, judgment, rejection, or perceived rejection? Then you might be struggling with something called rejection sensitive dysphoria. Hello, my name's Helena Mary and I am autistic and have ADHD, the perfect storm for rejection sensitive dysphoria. I was diagnosed with both ADHD and autism last summer at the age of 25. Rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD, is a topic I've recently really got my teeth into. It was brought to my attention when I made a TikTok detailing my feelings after I got a negative response to an idea at work. The comments people made highlighting RSD to me on the video were enlightening. And it was something I couldn't believe I didn't consider I struggled with before that point. Let's jump right into it. What is RSD? Rejection sensitive dysphoria is a manifestation of emotional dysregulation, a common feature of autism and ADHD. Emotional dysregulation is the inability to properly modulate and regulate emotions. So, how are emotional dysregulation and RSD linked? People with RSD feel immense emotional pain in response to rejection or perceived rejection. And this pain is incredibly difficult to regulate. RSD can be hard to spot in others because it doesn't always lead to an outward reaction. Sure, reactions to RSD can definitely be external and lead to emotional outbursts such as anger or bursting into tears, or even trigger a meltdown. But reactions can also be internalized, for example, negative self talk. Over time, these can lead to chronic low self esteem issues. Some examples of behavior and experiences someone with RSD might be pretty familiar with are perceiving any and all feedback or criticism as rejection, feeling the conscious or even unconscious need to people please, replaying situations in your head over and over again to work out what you did wrong, some mistake that you made, fearing disappointing others, especially those you look up to or respect, avoiding trying new things altogether due to the fear of making mistakes or looking silly, feeling constantly perceived, doing your day-to-day activities due to a heightened worry of making a mistake or being judged. RSD is a commonly recognized trait of ADHD, but it's not included in the diagnostic criteria. And the coiner of the term RSD believes that this is because these criteria were developed to identify observable presentations in children with ADHD, and therefore do not capture internalized cognitive and emotional traits, especially in adults. ADHD and RSD are thought to be linked for a few reasons. As mentioned, ADHDers often have intense difficulty with emotional regulation, but additionally can often struggle with impulsivity. These two factors can lead us to immediately assuming the rejection is happening or that it's completely unjust. And then our emotional dysregulation allows us to react disproportionately to the situation. People with ADHD statistically also have more experience of real rejection in our childhood, whether it be from parents, teachers, or peers. We then develop these coping mechanisms early on to deal with this, and these can then perpetuate throughout our entire life. So as adults, we elicit almost a trauma response to these feelings surfacing when rejected. Autism and RSD has not yet been researched fully, but there are a few hypotheses as to why autism and RSD anecdotally go hand in hand. Autistic and ADHD individuals alike often struggle with emotional dysregulation and have similar childhood experiences of rejection. In addition, autistic people often have what are called introception difficulties. Introception is essentially recognizing and then also understanding our body's internal signals. It allows us to recognize things like being hungry, thirsty, needing the bathroom, but also our own feelings. Autistic people often struggle with interoception and then also naming our own or others' emotions, known as alexithymia. Therefore, autistic people might not be able to recognize the difference between feeling sad and disappointed versus feeling rejected, and might also struggle to to identify and name what other people are feeling in a given moment and therefore project our own perception as truth onto them. It is important to note RSD in isolation is always triggered by something, and it's usually quite a clear and identifiable trigger. The feelings in most cases subside in a couple of hours, and the response to the trigger usually matches the perception of the trigger, i.e., the reaction is not out of proportion in terms of how someone has perceived the situation, but it may seem out of proportion to an observer of the situation because that person's not privy to the perception, if that makes sense. So, what are some tips for managing RSD? Out with an RSD episode, focus on your strengths and reinforce these whenever you can. Keep them in the forefront of your mind, whether by writing them down somewhere you can see them frequently, or develop a daily or even hourly affirmation. This can help combat the feelings of low self-esteem that repeatedly being triggered can cause, although it won't necessarily stop RSD feelings from affecting you in the moment. The second tip I have is exit a situation temporarily where possible. If you know and can predict that you're about to be triggered, take as literal a step back as you can. Sometimes this won't be possible, but when it is, taking a step back from a situation, even if it means like counting to 10 before outwardly reacting, especially with anger, can delay and therefore minimize or stop the potential damage you might do to yourself in the process. The third tip I have, just keep in mind that RSD is completely valid. The more you understand and accept that you do just feel emotions more intensely and stop beating yourself up after you've reacted negatively to a situation, hopefully the lesser the impact on your overall mental health and feelings towards yourself will be. And the fourth tip I have is remember, where possible, RSD episodes will end, usually within an hour or two. It might seem like eternity at the time, but sometimes it can really help to remind yourself over and over that a feeling is temporary, even if you don't believe it. Now, the number one thing I want you to take away from this video is that RSD does not make you too sensitive, a difficult person, or too emotional. In fact, RSD is actually a legitimate response to how you are perceiving a situation. It's not a flaw, it is completely valid. And the more you can communicate about your RSD to your loved ones outside of a triggering episode, the more people around you will start to be able to accommodate you and prevent your triggers. If you experience RSD, let us know in the comments what your experience is, because there'll be people out there who believe that they are alone in this feeling. What do you find most difficult about struggling with RSD? Do you have any tips to manage or accept your RSD? For more videos about ADHD and autism, be sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube. It is a very small channel right now, so any support in any form that you could give me means the world and makes a huge difference. And make sure you check out my TikTok, which is kind of my primary platform, and my very small but very mighty Instagram, both under @helena.mary. I also have a podcast called Girl on the Spectrum, where I interview fellow autistic, ADHD, neurodivergent people and hear them talk about topics that are near and dear to them. You can find that on Spotify. So that is a shameless self-promotion over. Thank you so much for watching, and I really, really hope I see you here again. Bye!